Greetings from Syosset, New York. We'll give you more video of our local service facility in Syosset, New York, but today's show is kind of focused on two primary areas. The first is that Saudi Arabia, in an attempt to attack Tesla, is tanking the whole stock market in the process. The second thing we cover today is that there's news that's popped up, which is that the 37 mile per gallon RAV4 hybrid is supposedly a threat to Tesla sales. And I thought it was an interesting news note that was worth covering as well. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. As you all probably know, I grew up in the New York area, and I'm back in a place called Syosset, New York, where which is close to Oyster Bay, which is kind of where I grew up, and chose the opportunity to go ahead and check out the service facility here. And I think you guys will enjoy maybe seeing the video. There are a couple of things that I'd like to show you in particular here. One is the service vehicle that's a Model S, and number two is there's some water issues with a Model S here, and it's kind of interesting to see how it's taped up, and we'll show you that at the end of our show. So the first part of our conversation today focuses on the fact that Saudi Arabia has decided that one of the management processes for new technologies by Saudi Arabia and the rest of OPEC is that anytime oil prices get to a certain number, and that number is in the range of $75 a barrel, and it's headed towards $100 a barrel, there's an effort by the oil producing countries to reduce the amount of EVs and other alternative fuels that become viable at $80 a barrel. So the goal then is typically to try to keep the prices somewhere in that $70-ish a barrel range as a way to manage competition entering in large force from other fuel sources. And so it seems to some extent this has kind of backfired. Please, just a note, please like and subscribe. We're also on Patreon. Could use your support there if possible. So what's going on is that, to continue, there's sort of layers of a discussion here. There is another variable that's influenced what's been going on with oil prices, which is that the U.S. announced sanctions against Iran, but then those sanctions against several major countries like China have been delayed. And so what this means is there's way more supply of oil than there should be out there. The Saudis have made an attempt to reduce production in order to try to get that balanced out, but it's resulted in the prices of gas starting to fall, or oil starting to fall. So, by the way, please note, all of you I can see here are lows. I'll catch up with you at the end because all of our viewers have asked us to execute in that fashion. So that's an FYI that I appreciate the hellos and Thanksgiving notices and really appreciate that. So there's something really, this whole discussion of declining oil prices kind of blends into our discussion of options. And I wanted to note, for those of you who have taking our options class, note that there's a symbol called USO, which is how you can do options on, you can do options against oil prices. So what that means is that you can buy either a put if you think the oil prices are going to fall, or call if you think oil prices are going to rise. And that's totally up to you in terms of what your thoughts are, but you're able to leverage the knowledge of options you're gaining on Tesla to trade other entities. And an example would be, that's illustrative of an example in this case. So the oil story gets a little bit more complex here, and here's why. The United States is now the #1 producer of oil in the world. The biggest change that occurred that's generating this is a concept called fracking. Now, The problem with frackers is that their cost of producing oil is someplace in the range of 30 on the low end, but on an average probably about $40 a barrel. Now, what happens is that if oil prices are falling, there are a number of firms that are out there that have to pay a lot of money to, well, obviously with their cost being about 40 bucks and the cost of shipping, let's say by rail, being another $11 a barrel, their costs end up being about $51 a barrel. So what happens is if oil prices are starting to fall and they're currently at about $53 a barrel, it creates an issue where for those entities that don't want to lose a lot of money, they have to go and put in overtime in order to make sure that they're pumping out as much oil as possible. Now, this has been a long discussion leading back to Tesla, because what's actually happening is that oil and oil producers represent 20%, 25% of the stock market. So what happens is that most people, when they see heavy movements in something, everybody will jump out the window and get away from the stock market. And then once the dust clears, they'll come back. So what we've seen happen with Tesla is, because there's a lot of good news on Tesla in terms of production, increasing production, and how that revenue is affecting Tesla's stock price, we basically end up with Tesla staying about the same or rising slightly until we see what those new numbers are. I expect Tesla by the second week of December to announce how many vehicles they've produced and shipped for the quarter. And if in fact Elon has gotten to the 7,000 cars a week level that he targeted for the end of November, I think the numbers delivered should be better than expected, which should actually push the stock price nicely forward. So Tesla's in a zone right now where there are a few question marks. The biggest question mark is they need $920 million to pay bonds due in March by January 15th. And so we're going to find out if they have that money based on sales of Model 3. Oh, excuse me. Based on sales, production and sales of Model 3 is the biggest impactor on that number. But Tesla has pulled out all the stops possible to generate the number. Number one, they've opened up China, booking your vehicle in terms of China. Number two, by the end of December, they're going to start opening up ordering in Europe. And then obviously, whatever ordering is happening in the United States is already driven by cars being delivered. But it's possible that Tesla's collecting $2,500 fees from perhaps 50 to 100,000 people in Europe and Asia. And, adding another $250 million to your account real quick can be helpful in meeting obligations of bills that might be on the table. So right now, the market is actually very jittery, because the long discussion I went through with you about oil, there's been suggestions that oil prices could get cut in half. So not totally, but this implies that a number of companies that are oil dependent could also get cut in half. So it's my belief that Tesla's doing great, doing fine, but the movement of oil could result in, and then add in what's happening at Apple and Facebook. And so you have 30 to 40% of the market that's moving downward, while a company like Tesla is doing extremely well. So the answer is that midpoint between earnings, when a company isn't announcing anything, analysts and others can influence the stock price greatly, but also what's happening with companies that aren't Tesla impacted can also heavily move the stock, even though it has nothing to do with how and what Tesla's up to. So my take on things right now is that everything I'm seeing suggests that Tesla is delivering a huge number of Model 3s profitably, and that the company is doing great, and it's going to meet the bond agreements and not go into bankruptcy restructuring. All of that is good news and looking great on the horizon. The problem is the stock market is not really cooperating, based in particular on the fall of oil, but there's some large players, as I said, like Apple, Amazon, and Facebook that are moving downward that are also shaping the direction of the market, and sort of Tesla's moving somewhat in sympathy to them. So, any rate, complex argument. Wanted to give you guys a good feel for what we thought was going on right now, and how and where Tesla is currently, and how and where we think it's going. So the answer is that if they get to 7,000 units a week, that's almost they were doing 4,000, 4,500 a week for the last earnings period. So if you average in the 6,000 range for this earnings period, I think all the signs are that, you know, they're pushing as good, if not better, revenue numbers and profit numbers than they were in the last period, and therefore I think this is a healthy sign for the company, even if the stock market is taking it in the shorts right now. So the next thing I wanted to cover today focused on the fact that terrific. The next thing I wanted to sort of concentrate on right now is something that I'm really kind of learning about right now. And there's an interesting conversation that popped up. Electrek and others were reporting that the brand new RAV4 is getting 37 miles a gallon in its hybrid form. And I think it's great that they're doing that. The suggestion is this could impact the Model 3 sales based on the fact that the gas mileage that the Model 3 is targeting, even though it's an electric, is the equivalent of 37 miles a gallon. And I just thought this was really fascinating because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people that really want to get off the gas plan, and a lot of folks are putting in solar panels and, you know, energy storage in the garage as ways to find ways to sort of move off fossil fuels. And I would say that this is probably a dedicated 5 to 10% of the buying public. So even if you have vehicles that are somewhat comparable like this, even better gas mileage than that are out there, I just don't think it affects anything. And the other problem that I'm seeing right now is what we're forecasting is that, you know, there's an interesting problem, which is calculating the numbers of Model 3s that are being sold is difficult, because what's happening is you have early adopters or people that put in their deposits, and after neighbors and friends see good things about that Model 3, even people that didn't do the deposits are actually wanting to you know, jump into Teslas, particularly the Model 3 as well. So as long as they can get this service thing figured out and parts for it, I think it'll be a blockbuster for Tesla. I also wanted to, I see all these comments coming across, and I appreciate your guys sharing things that are going on that might be commentary topics to consider. Thank you for noting those. The next thing, so, you know, yes, I think sales are doing well in Europe. I actually have to admit, I do not know much about what's going on with the Model S doors freezing when you wash the car in the winter, but entirely possible. It sounds logical and something to consider. I did see the piece about the fact that Tesla has begun discounting their Chinese vehicles to address the tariffs. This is bad news for Tesla. They got to move some cars rather than have them sit around at higher prices. It is nice to see that Tesla is going to be assembling in China soon, so this problem is going to be solved over the next 4 to 5 months. I think going to start producing by July, and so something to think about. Sean, thanks for the comment regarding your doors having frozen while you're washing the car in the winter. It'd be interesting to see you guys share, you know, below in comments, etc., how you addressed the problem when this occurred. And so that would be kind of interesting. So, you know, I'm actually looking really forward to walking the lot here in Brooklyn, I'm sorry, here in Syosset, New York. What's really strange is that we have approximately 100 cars. It's more like 130 cars here. And from what I can see, about 60% of our Model S's. And I wouldn't say new. I mean, it seems to be repair vehicles primarily, with a few new vehicles and some vehicles that need some body work as well. there are two things that I'll encourage you to note that I'll cover heavily. One is we have a service vehicle here that's a Model S that's white, and it looks like a Red Cross vehicle, and I'll definitely walk by it and walk around it so you can take in the look. I think it's kind of cool. The other thing I wanted to note is there's a Model S that the type of damage it sustained was kind of interesting, because what they did was they ended up taping up the windows so that water can't get in. And I'm assuming there was some kind of windows ripped out or something. We'll try to figure out what that is. But I wanted to note in general items that I've seen here that are kind of interesting. The one thing I'm finding that's kind of strange, and I don't know why this is that in the Washington, D.C. area, particularly in the Tyson's Corner location that I go to a lot, about 70% of the cars are Model 3, and they have about 250 cars on the lot. Here in the Syosset facility, 70% of the car are Model S's, as you'll see, with very few brand new Model 3s here. So I'm assuming customers have taken delivery on them. And so it's kind of a strange thing to see the difference between it's a strange thing to see the difference in the lots. And as we walk around, I mean, you may not be able to hear me because of wind noise, but you can actually, this is something that you might want to take in, is sort of the difference in lot structure. So, you know, I think this is a interesting sub-note. At any rate, I really appreciate all of you firing some great comments here, etc. Just a reminder, I just did my 20 leg lifts, would encourage you to do the same. Getting a golf or tennis ball under your foot and doing some stretching on that is another suggestion that was given, and might be something to consider. We're going to jump out and do a walk around here at the facility, and then we're going to close out from there. Hey, Sean and Donovan in Europe, thanks for the commentary there about the fact that washing your car in very cold temperatures can result in the doors freezing afterwards. So I'm going to walk you guys around our lot here. Yeah, most of the cars have license plates on them, so it looks like a repair situation rather than new vehicles. Yeah, there are almost no cars here. There are almost no cars here that don't have license plates on them. So that's kind of interesting. It looks like the Long Island folks are buying the Model 3 in large numbers, so there's actually room in the lot for us to take. There's plenty of room in the lot, as you can see. As you can see, we have a large number of cars here, and it looks like a lot of repair work. So this is one of the cars that I was particularly focused on here. As you can see, it's the Tesla service vehicle in the Model S version, and it's kind of an interesting look. It was determined by Tesla that there was a need to do the Model 3, and there was a need to do a Model S version of the repair vehicles because certain parking garages in buildings couldn't fit a full-size van or one of the other larger vehicles that are for service by Tesla. So that's why that was being done. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting to see that we actually have, as you can see, I haven't seen that before, which is supercharging going on in front of the service facility. We do not have that in the Washington, D.C. area, but I thought that was kind of helpful to see that outside. And I don't know if you're allowed to use that if you're a regular customer. You know, these are obviously, you need speed of some work. Now this is something that I think is kind of cool that I haven't seen before. If you guys will take a look. So we have the white interior here. We have the white interior, but we also have a red car. So I think that's kind of a new different. That's worth noting. And so here we have a jacked up Model S. And I just thought it was kind of interesting because, as you can see, they're trying to avoid, so the Model S has sustained damage, and they're trying to avoid water getting inside the car before it's repaired. And I like the tape job that they've done there to prevent having issues with water getting into the car. So I think that's nicely done as a way to prevent, you know, this is also something that I haven't seen a lot, which is a lot of rubber. Just a feel for the Continental tires that are there. I like that. I have to admit, I've been enjoying seeing the white, on white, but the red car with white seats is something I've not seen a lot, and it actually looks really good. So something new and different to check out. At any rate, as you can see, it's brutally cold out here with a nice wind, but it is still sunny, so we're able to go from there. Interesting. Wow. Roger, good suggestion. I haven't heard that one. If you could write it in our notes here, I think there are other people that would love to see that because they may not be able to see it on this part of the show. Thank you for that comment. That's a terrific idea. Any rate, I want to thank all of you for joining us. Excellent comments as usual. Roger, Donovan, Brett, there are a number of you that were on. Thank you for sharing your comment. Yes, we're in Long Island, New York. Jonathan, thanks for that comment. Again, want to thank all of you for joining us. Please, a reminder to like and subscribe. We also could use some help on Patreon if you would. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight saying thanks for joining us. Look forward to your comments. Tschüss, happy holidays. Tschüss, Max, German. Au revoir, French. Lehitraot, Hebrew. Choda Hafez, Farsi. Farvel, Dutch. Adios, Spanish. And in Jamaica we say, "Enough respect, walk good man." And Donovan, we're trying the jerk turkey today, so we'll update you on how that came out with my aunt. Have a great day, and thank you once again for joining us, and look forward to all of your comments and to our next show tomorrow.